In this video, we're going to compare how Illustrator, Inkscape, and Affinity handle artboards and layers. Those two cannot be separated. Let's start in Illustrator. I'm starting with a new document, and all these settings you're doing here do not have an influence on how artboards or layers behave. You can just set up the size here, but nothing about the behavior. So let's create that. And once you have your document, you can create objects in it. Let's make this red here. And when you move it around, then you see no matter if you move it inside of an artboard or outside of an artboard, it doesn't change. So let's make some copies of that. So now I'm going to create some more artboards by just going to the Artboard tool, and then I'm going to use this plus button. And you see we already have the layers panel here. The artboards do not appear there. If you want to manage the artboards, for example, their order, you have to go to the Artboard panel, which is this one here where you can sort them. If you want to resize them, that happens with the Artboard tool. If you have more layers, then those layers span all of the document. And this element here can be part of another layer. And once we're moving it around, that also does not change. It stays part of that layer. Doing that in Inkscape is basically the same. So we have Inkscape here. It already has a new document. I'm going to zoom out a little and move that slightly to the size. And we have an object here. And if I move it around, then you see no matter where I move it, inside or outside of an artboard, it does not change. Here we have the layers panel, and also the artboard is not inside of it. Let's take the Artboard tool and make some more artboards. Just like this, and you see still they are not part here. Let's now make some copies of that, and no matter where I move that, this does not change. The artboards are just not part of that here. In order to manage those artboards, you go to that tool, and there you have the option to change the order of those artboards. Now let's take a look at Affinity. And I'm going to just create a new document without changing any of those options. And we have the document. And when I'm now creating an object inside of that, let's make that red again. And moving this around, then you see as soon as I move it outside of that artboard, or even completely outside, then it vanishes. It's just hidden. That is caused by an option in the view menu. You have to turn off Clip to Canvas. And once you've done that, this behaves like Illustrator and Inkscape behave. You can move the object around. Let's take a look at the layers. I'm going to Window General Layers. So there they are. And you see this document doesn't have any layers by default. So you can create everything using no layers at all. That is not recommended, but you can totally do that. Let's see what happens when we add some complexity. So we've got this Artboard tool, and of course inside of that vector document you might want to have artboards at some point, and then you can click on Insert Artboard. So now what we still need to do is actually have that artboard. So I'm going to click and drag to create an artboard, and you see now in the layers panel we get the artboards. So the artboards are actually integrated into the document structure. The rectangle is still outside because it's not part of an artboard. So I'm going to take it and move it here, and you see now when it's halfway into the artboard, it's only visible inside of the artboard. But we go to View, Clip to Canvas is still unchecked. So let's move it here, and you see once you do that, it automatically became a child of that artboard. And I'm going to move the element over here. And you see, once you're doing that, it gets a child of Artboard 2. So you move that around, and automatically it's moved around in the layers panel. That also happens when you add layers here. I'm going to create a container layer, and you see it got added to the document. It's still not a child of any of those artboards, but that can totally happen. A layer can be a child of an artboard, and also the other way around. An artboard can be the child of a layer. If you now have an effect applied, I've got that layer selected. Let's add an effect to it. I'm going to have a shadow. Let's give that a radius and an offset so that we can see it, and close that. So we have an effect on that layer. And let's move the element here. And let's have the element on the layer. So like this. And I'm going to zoom into this. And maybe I need to edit that effect a little. So let's have more intensity and get more of that radius. And you see now we've got a nice shadow here. I'm going to close this and then again move this around, and you see it gets moved off. So if you are using layers, children of artboards, to have an effect on multiple objects, then moving those around inside of the document can get tricky. Let's revert that. Maybe you decide you want to get rid of the second artboard. That's completely possible. I'm first going to have a copy of this. So we also have an element outside of this here. And also I'm going to make a copy here. So we have an element on each artboard and one on the canvas. I'm first going to color them differently so we can check which one we can keep. And in order to get back to the kind of document where you do not have multiple artboards, you go to Document, Pages, and Convert Artboards to Spreads. And you see this gets rid of everything that is not part of the first artboard. So we are back to where we started from. Now you can add artboards, but you can also add pages, because this is an all-in-one app. So you can turn this into a layout document. Let's go to Document, Pages, and now to this document you can add pages. I'm going to add some pages to this, and you see now we have some pages here. We still do not have any layers. We haven't created any. What we also now need, although we have now multiple things, but those are pages, not artboards, so they are not in the layers panel. So we need to go to Window, Layout, Pages. So there they are. There we need to keep them. And now we need to select the page we want to add layers to. So this now here, and I'm going to add that layer to it. Let's have a container layer. Let's see where I've added that. So I've added that to page 2. We need to double click them, and then we have this. So again, here we do not have layers that span everything, but layers are children of the pages. And if you want to have a certain layer on all the pages, you have to add it to each single page in order to have that. So that's how Affinity handles layers, artboards, and pages, and goes back and forth between artboards and pages. And while some of that seems pretty intuitive at first glance, it comes at a cost as regards managing your layers and your artwork on the layers.